Should be live. Hi, Matt.
Wait a minute.
How long is a minute? All right, it is 5:15. We'll get the committee portion started of the meeting. We'll start with curriculum and policy and look at the early graduation request that we have that was in our packet.
Just one request for you, pretty much standard scenario. I don't think there's anything hot about it, right, Mr. Wilson?
Correct.
All right, so any board members have any questions, comments about it?
Is there a reason why we wouldn't ever approve a request for somebody to graduate early?
Probably not. I mean, we allow that, and typically if there's going to be some issues with it, likely the administrative team wouldn't bring it before you until we rectify those issues. If a parent, for example, would push the issue and say, well, no, we'll let the board decide, then maybe, but I mean, it's quite rare that something like that would happen.
In past practice for, a couple of decades, as long as the kid has a purpose and a plan, and that's what I always talked with them about in the counseling role. Why? We need to have a reason for it, if it's to go make money or to, we've had students entering the military that they're heading off to basic early, things like that. So to have a purpose to get out early is always something that I've stressed. In my 20 years, there's been no denial, but kids have always had a plan.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the board goals, which we have a paper copy of that for you. I apologize for not getting them out sooner. In the packet, I think I captured what we talked about at the last meeting. We got it relayed into here. I did have Ronnie look at it, I did have Craig look at it, so she had the opportunity, but was busy numbing that internet today. So I don't know if we want to walk through them, the big changes. I should have brought my notes. No, I don't have everything bolded in here. With number one, I think the biggest changes were the periodic presentations out of that first line. And ensuring, because we do have systems and different things in place, but I think ensuring the creation or maintenance of a resource. I think I added the word or maintenance in there, because we have things in place already, but just to make sure they're being maintained. Other than that, it's the same for the first one. And the second one, union engagement. Oh, we just put in here that, that we have our work session by September 2025, which is tonight. The meeting is tonight. And I think I just changed, took the bold out of it as to how often we wanted reports. It's still in the biannual updates. Just kind of going over summarizing key initiatives and things. One question I had is, it's possible that after a meeting with Kirk and Craig tonight that we may want to still tweak it. We're not approving these tonight, we're approving them later, so we could maybe focus on the other one at this point. The other one, the next one with the financial stability, we made a few changes in this one, regarding enrollment trends. Based on the comments and feedback that I got from the last meeting, we're not going to be going out looking at new fancy facilities, but still maintain diligent oversight. We currently are doing that of the district's fiscal health, while exploring innovative strategies to address enrollment trends and ensure responsible stewardship of public resources. That was the biggest change with that one in that bullet. Then just tweak the revised, typically we get quarterly budget updates anyways, and then an annual report, or as needed, I guess, on the enrollment of different things. So we see, typically we're kept pretty abreast on what's going on with that. And then the last one, I eliminated the first bullet, because most of that stuff had already been done, as far as the support the leadership transition. And I think that was about it on that. I did tweak now the second one a little bit in regards to the professional development, because we found out that he has access to a lot of that stuff, so. I think everything is there. Any other questions, comments, feedback on it? And like I said, we're not going to approve them tonight, so you can have these and give them a look. And we'll talk more about the goal number 2 after the regular meeting.
Yeah, and I would just say that the conversation that Kirk and I had in preparation for our work session this evening aligns with the bullet points and the documentation that's part of that, so I don't have zero concerns with respect to the direction we're going.
And I just wanted to say thank you, Brent, for the work you put into that. It's a bit of work and thoughtfulness.
Yep, I apologize for not getting it out sooner, but life happens.
And it's a big job.
And then the other thing I'll just mention, since I'm talking about that, is you should have all got an email for the superintendent evaluation too. Hopefully. You're,
I didn't see it.
okay.
I'll check
Well, let me
this.
know if you didn't, because that should have came out 2 days ago or something like that. So I'll have to set a time and stuff to get that done by and review it. So. All right, and I should say that I ended up going back with the old format just because I didn't have time to go through the whole new thing that they had. Is that for the board goals? That was just the WASB thing?
Oh, no, that was a superintendent development.
Yeah, I wasn't having time to go through that whole
It's
thing.
very convoluted.
Yeah. So I just dusted off the old one, the Survey Monkey one, and used that. I tweaked it a little bit. One of the questions on HR talked about implementing a new HR system, which we are not asking him to do, we did not ask him to do, so I took that out and changed the language of that a little bit. Other than that, it's the same that we've used for years. All right, next we'll move on to the child care rate discussion.
Yeah, so as I indicated in your board update and on the attached documentation, Rita and Jess working together had brought this forward, and of course Rita's here to answer any significant questions that you might have. But generally, upon review of child care centers in the area, our rates are significantly lower than most, if not all. And you see that there's a trend that, of course, as with anything else, they increase over time because the cost of doing business continues to increase in terms of staff and facilities. So the recommendation that the board's being asked to consider is a $10 increase in September and a $10 increase in May. On that chart, then, you can see how those numbers would compare. You go from 195 to 205 for infants per day, 185 to 195 for toddlers, 180 to 190 for preschool, and 132 to 142 for part-time. And of the centers that responded, we can see where they land, and those numbers don't put us wildly outside of what those other local daycare providers are charging. So the purpose for bringing it forward would be that we think it's reasonable to ask for this relatively small increase over the course of this school year.
And will you ask for us to approve May now as well? I know it's
Yes.
10 in September and 10 in May.
Yeah, we would handle the year so that we can do the 10 in September and 10 in May.
And how do we still compare to samples? Are we still under after these implementations?
Not on the chart, if you look at the chart in your
I
board.
can.
You have, in your,
My computer's toast.
oh, and also there's, if you have Spectrum, you can't anyway, because there's no
Oh.
internet anymore.
I
But
can-
if,
I can put it up if you want me to.
yeah,
So Matt, just for your knowledge, while Ray's looking for it, 235 is Osceola for infants, and we would be at 205. So for infants, we moved from 195 to 205. Osceola's at 235, Frederick's at 205, Amory's at 190. Unity, the only data we have in there is that they're lower than Frederick. Luck is at 230, and the Grove, which is in Milltown, is 300.
And those, the ones that are lower than ours are they're just about to raise their rates too. It's gonna, I mean, it's just everywhere right now because of the change in the government subsidies.
So the only one listed on this that's lower than us is Amory, after the increase.
And how big is that? I wonder.
About the same as ours. I
Okay.
mean, a little less because they only have the one site. Yeah.
So that, there's a pretty big opportunity there, see $25. But we're changing it to get a bit more close. Are we trying to draw, I don't want to shock families. On the other hand, aren't we not in the black anymore because
So
of
we,
the grants
so
and such?
it's a hard, as of now, we're still doing okay, and we have, because of Fund 80, we're always, with the levy, we're always
Mm-hmm.
gonna be doing okay.
Okay.
As far as it being a money-making endeavor, it never will be.
Yeah.
So we're in the, I mean, I hate to, it depends on how you look at it. Without the levy, we are definitely in the red.
Yeah.
With the levy, we're still in the black. We would have, if any daycare in Wisconsin that wanted to make money would have to raise rates by $100 per kid
Yeah.
to make any money in a daycare. It's absolutely not feasible anymore. The Grove is starting a lot higher than us, and they get subsidies from the company that's,
Yeah.
so we're still, we're trying to keep it, it's a really tough balance because we want to keep it, the whole point of it
Yeah.
was to serve families.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep the price at a point where they can still pay, but
Mhm.
also where we're not having huge gaps that's gonna make make it harder for us to stay in the black even with the levy.
Yeah.
But we will still, the grants didn't get taken away. We still do have the grants, they're just less money.
Okay, all right, so yes, some follow-up questions would be, so the levy is where the taxpayers get charged a fraction of a penny or something per 100,000, is that what that is? And
Correct.
they help with,
Yeah, so Fund 80 is
Something
levied locally outside of the revenue cap, which is
Yeah.
our general funding structure, Fund
Yeah.
10, Fund 27, Fund 50. And Fund 80 can be levied outside of the revenue cap and set unilaterally by the school board.
yeah,
The dollar figure that's been tossed around with respect to Fund 80 backfilling quote-unquote childcare is, I think, $40,000 or $50,000 a year. In terms of what that impact is on the local levy, you would have to look at a case-by-case scenario, but frankly, it's not, $40,000 levied among all of our equalized property value is not a lot of money
right.
annually. I'd be surprised if it's even $100 per year on one of the more expensive homes for that money. See what I'm saying? I don't know unless I have the specifics, but it's not a high amount.
Yeah, and so is it appealing? Okay, so we'll be at what, 215 in about a year. Is it appealing to be really the lowest in the area?
Not really, no. So here's the thing, it doesn't matter because the need is so great. We still have 170 kids on the wait list. So even, it doesn't matter, but our goals, when we think about what our mission and vision was when we began this whole thing, it was to serve the community. And so that's where we try and really make that our driving force behind every decision and keeping prices as low as we possibly can. Understanding it's never gonna be a money-making endeavor.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, we could raise rates as high or higher than the Grove, and we'd still probably have kids in there. It's just that then we become a center that serves only the haves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you have your rates too low, I mean, we already are at a competitive price point, arguably, on the lower end of that spectrum. And as Rita said, we have 170 kids on the waiting list. So it isn't, we have no capacity to serve those kids anyhow due to space and staffing constraints. And so even if we were to remain cheaper and continue to backfill even a greater amount over time, we would further exacerbate and not continue to serve the community anyway. So really what it is finding that proper balance point among what Rita's indicating is the service to the community and ensuring that we're a child care that can serve our diverse community, but also cognizant of circumstance
Yes.
and making small modifications over time.
And 215 puts us in the middle of the pack, it doesn't leave us at the bottom.
Yeah.
Raises to the top.
Not that it matters, but the price point that's listed for the Grove, is that the public? And do they, I thought maybe they were offering like a discount for their, like, staff?
For their
To, like,
staff,
prioritize, so that
they do offer a discount for their
Okay.
staff, yep.
And just on a separate note, what did we find out about, preferential, placement on the list for, people that are going to open enroll in St. Croix or are within the school district and are not open enrolling elsewhere? Is that allowable? Or
No.
It's not?
No, I mean,
Okay.
it could be, but I think it becomes such a logistical nightmare.
Mhm.
And if you have kids who you can say you're gonna open enroll here, but then not, so that would be an easy way to bump. You could say, any parent who found that out could say, not that I think parents are
Yeah,
trying, but
they just say it.
they could just say it and then they get up on the list, but the people who've been waiting for a spot forever never do.
Yeah. And so, one of our goals was to, try to discourage open enrollment away and encourage open enrollment in.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. This year, we're trying something new, so I do feel like I feel like one of our goals was to encourage open enrollment with the childcare, and that hasn't panned out. And so I took a deep reflective dive this summer and asked myself why, and I think some of it's a failure of leadership on my part. And I'm gonna be there more at all their functions, trying to make sure they know. I want them to get to know me, so that they know if they bring their baby here, I'll love their baby. I think that will be helpful for them to see the connection between the daycare and the elementary. We are also working with the state licensor to see if we can open up one room at the Dresser Elementary School for our 3K kids, for our daycare kids. Once they have started school in the Dresser building, it's gonna be hard for them to wanna not stay. So those are the two big, when I was reflecting the two big things I thought we should be doing to encourage more open enrollment, because that was one of our goals.
Yeah, that was our main goal.
Mm-hmm.
That was our main goal.
Oh, in my mind, our main goal was
Yeah.
to serve the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always with the hope that we would encourage open enrollment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's probably evolved too,
Mhm.
because of enrollment now going down. So certain community and
Mhm.
public enrollment.
And pricing incentives not going to help, because you said you've got two plans, two changes.
Mhm.
A third is not pricing?
No, because again, I don't know how you would, I guess you could say, we could do, certainly we could explore the possibility of saying, if you open enroll your older kid, we can give you a price break at the child care center. We could certainly talk about that, if people are interested in talking about that.
Just an idea.
I'll throw it out to Jess and see what she says, and then we can come back and check in with Craig about it. Does that sound like a plan?
Because didn't somebody say that, what, half of our kids are actually gonna go elsewhere? Or something? That are in the daycares?
Yeah, half are, but that's because they live in the Osceola School District. So they come, it's not really about, it's not our kids leaving us.
Yeah.
None of our kids who live in our school district are saying, well, we're gonna go to Osceola. These are kids that live in the Osceola School District,
Yeah.
so our daycare's the only game in town.
That's the thing. So
Yeah.
I would point out that when you're talking about something like childcare with 170 kids on a waiting list, you can see what the need is. So I'm sure that there's some people that have kids in childcare here that wouldn't want them here if they had a choice, because they don't want to drive as far as they have to drive to get into our childcare. Now, it's great, I'm not talking about the quality, because of course it's very high quality, but on the same hand, when you're talking about open enrolling a student, there's broader functions that are taken into account. Someone could have their kid in the childcare in St. Croix currently, and they live 3 minutes from Osceola High School.
That's exactly
And
what
so
it is, yeah.
They're going to, make a comparison as a family with respect to where do we live, where am I gonna spend most of my time, when my kid gets to, you know, X age, that sort of thing. So I would just simply say, there are elements that I think are beyond your control
Yeah.
with respect to open enrollment, and I think too, that tie, rather than Rita berating herself with respect to leadership, because I don't
No,
think
no,
that's
I'm not
what it-
berating myself, I'm just saying I need to do better. That's
Yeah,
all.
but I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know, I also don't want the false pretense that that's going to have an impact on decision-making for families. Because in many cases, it has to do with much more than just, I know for a fact my kid's gonna be super well taken care of and really love going to school, which they're gonna get here. You know what I'm saying? I recognize that, so I don't mean to undersell that. But just rationally speaking, that might not be enough of an incentive. Again, if I live,
Appreciate that.
if I'm across from the elementary school, my
Mhm.
kid's probably gonna go to that elementary
Mhm.
school because I don't have to deal with bringing them somewhere.
I appreciate that. We do offer a bus at the child care centers too, the pickup spots, so that's always possible to sell that to parents too. Remember, you can just, you've been dropping your kid off at daycare anyway, you keep dropping your kid off at daycare. We'll pick them up there.
Yeah, so really, it comes down to like your 3K idea is kind of interesting, and
Mhm.
maybe they'll allow it, maybe they won't, but, so it's just kind of come down to an occasional family might just really enjoy their kids' experience at our daycare, and they go, I've always identified with Osceola, I live in Osceola, oh darn it, I like it there. So we just kind of hope that,
We do have many
An occasional one,
enrollments, this open enrollments from Osceola at the elementary
Yeah.
school this year. We do have a lot of more open enrollments at the elementary school this year. Why, I don't know, it doesn't have to do with the daycare, so
Yeah.
they're older kids and things like that. But I do
Yeah.
think there's more I could do, and I'm going to do those more things. Maybe it'll only end up one kid, and I appreciate your comments very much, Craig, thank you.
So would there, if your idea that you just had about the 3-year-old room at the building, so then would there be 3 cohorts of 3? One at Peaks, one at
No.
Saints 2, and then?
No.
No.
And it's also, the daycare landscape changes every 20 minutes.
Sure.
Literally. So, but what the plan right now would be to have the 3s move there and then open up another room for infants. Our biggest, of course, you don't make money in daycare with infants, but that's where the greatest need is. So we can open up more space at both Peace and, assuming we can get staffing. That is the big deal. No, people stay forever once they get hired at Little Saints, but I will tell you, quite honestly, the Grove is now paying $20 an hour per child care worker, and that's gonna give us a pretty good hit, and it's gonna be hard for us to compete with that. So the hope is to hire more staffing and bring 3s out of those buildings and into the 4K building.
Any other questions?
Is there a reason why you wouldn't increase to $20 right away in September? Is it
Just-
to be like progressive and allow
Yes.
families to adjust?
Yes. Mhm.
Are the Frederick, Amory, Unity, and Luck all run by the school districts?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to the 24-25 budget update.
Okay, I'll start with the 25-26 budget
All right,
update,
so-
because the quick answer is that we don't have solid numbers for you yet, which is why there wasn't documentation provided with your board packet. The reason being twofold: we're still working through numbers from the state with respect to the new biennial budget, and running some calculations with special ed. As I talked about at our last meeting, that special ed reimbursement rate has been increased, and the thing is that when we're running budget calculations in that regard, the increase is proportional to the expenditure such that it can be on a sliding scale, and we want to try to do our best to dial those numbers in, be as accurate as possible. And then I would also say that we still struggle with the new cumulative Skyward and getting it to spit out the kind of reports that we'd like it to. So there's a piece of that as well. Mostly because we're still locking down budget numbers, because as you can see, there's a Skyward cumulative report for the 24-25 school year. But it's different once all the numbers are inputted and you're just doing a roll down or wrap up of the budget year. So you will hear 25, 26 budget numbers. As far as the forecast is concerned, I would argue we're probably going to have a similar scenario to what was presented last year, which is about $100,000 swing to the negative or to the good in terms of the new budget with respect to what our staffing scenario looks like as we move into this year. I don't see anything wild on the horizon, meaning we could be minus $100,000 or we could be plus $100,000, and I would guess that that's where our budget will shake out somewhere in that mix. That could be way off, but that's the feeling that I get talking about and evaluating large whole numbers. Keep in mind, and as I lead into the 24-25 budget, a 2% modification to a budget of 16, 17, $18 million is a lot of money. So when you talk about a 1% or 2% budget difference, you're talking about a pretty significant figure when somebody says, oh my God, $1 million, how did you not know that you're, you know, or $500,000, how did you not know you're $500,000 over budget? Well, that's, you know, less than 1% of our budget. And so when you talk about it in terms of percentages, it does start to make sense and it adds up. So when we talk, is there questions about 25, 26 before I move into 24, 25?
When do you think you'll have that? Next month?
Yeah, probably. I think, well, by October for sure, because statutorily we have to. But it should come into sharper focus by September, I would argue, yes. Yeah. And as you know, for those of you that have been on the board, what you see, we tell you in September might be slightly different on October, and then frankly, there might be a budget adjustment that happens as you see the changes as it, you know, comes through the school year and stuff stack up. But yeah, we should have a much better picture come September. Shifting in then to 24-25, one of the things that transpired was after rolling down accounts and doing some further investigation and identification of how we ended, you can see on the sheet that was included for you, June 25th budget, board report, pardon me, the top half is our expenditures and the bottom half are our revenues. So if you're looking at the top half, you can see that the expenditures were projected at $15,929,000 and came in at $15,960,000. So 99.81% of the budget. And so that was pretty much on. Meaning that had we not underestimated our revenue, we would have been pretty much flat. We would have seen basically a zero or a balanced budget. And as you recall, we approved a minus $70,000 budget to start the school year. Last year, I told you that swing could be up to a minus 100,000 to plus 100,000, somewhere in that ballpark. If you go down to the revenues that are listed on the bottom half, or the second half of that page, there's a couple of notable areas. About halfway down the page where you see pupil transportation aid revenue, we had projected 85,000, and instead we took in 107,633. So there's $20,000 right there. Common school fund revenue, which generally is money in, money out. So I want to be clear, common school fund is like a grant. It's not a grant, but we have access to it for things like technology and supplying libraries. If we spend more and we claim more, then you have more revenue is the way that shakes out. And sometimes you can get common school fund revenue in the next fiscal year from when you made your claim. So that would be a revenue in 24-25 when the claim could have been made in 23-24, if that's making sense, if it straddles two calendar fiscal years, pardon me. So that came in at 82,000 and we had projected 50, so that's another 30. So now you're already up to $50,000. If you look at state revenue through, SAGE, district-wide SAGE, that's about, I'm gonna say 2/3 the way down the page. 326,000 came in versus an estimated 200,000, so that's achievement gap reduction. SAGE is what we call it in the old days, Student Achievement Guarantee in Education, and that's just not updated in the database for the financials. It's not consequential what it's titled, but that's what it is, achievement gap reduction, and so that's aid from the state. That comes in as revenue, and again there, 126,000 over what we were anticipating getting. In my experience, what ends up happening with AGR or SAGE dollars as they are stated is it's not sum sufficient, so you don't get the same amount each year. You get an amount that's based on a prorated calculation based on use through districts throughout the state, which means you can go up, you can go slightly down. Arguably, We'll probably utilize the 200,000, or maybe we'll inch it up to 220 or 250,000 in next year's budget, because I would rather have an overestimation in expenditures and an underestimation in revenues when we're talking about having you guys approve a budget. So that's ultimately what it comes down to, so that we do stand a better chance of ending up in a sweet spot. So something like AGR revenue, which can change on an annual basis, we're certainly going to underestimate, and it's great if it comes in, as it did in this case, $126,000 over what we anticipate. And then the last one that I'd point out to is computer aid district-wide, and that's just under one line under the SAGE. We came in at $96,899 versus $38,173. That's another $60,000, so you can see right there, we're accounting for the lion's share of what we now know to be around the $300,000, $280,000 surplus for the conclusion of the 24-25 school year, which is fantastically positive news. I had to do some research because I'm going to plead stupidity with respect to why we had 96,000 in computer aid instead of the projected 38. So computer aid is incorporated into your revenue cap sheet as where the lion's share of that comes from. So typically you should know what that fixed number is. The revenue cap sheet is pre-populated. We're responsible for the numbers, but it's pre-populated by DPI. So when you pull those numbers over and you identify what you're going to get, in most cases, if Lorraine has in the budget 38,173, she probably got it off the revenue cap sheet, where it was listed at 38,173. This is not a random number we're pulling out of the air, or something reasonably close to that. What ended up happening is that in 2023, Act 12 was enacted, and this is where I'm going to plead stupidity, because I, in talking with Lorraine, was like, what's Act 12? I'm not even aware of this, and I'm very confident not much, if anything, came through from the state with respect to informing school districts, but it's $58,000 from 96,000 down to 38, which we had projected, which is a good chunk of change, and thank goodness we received that aid. But why, I thought, was an important question. And what it is that Act 12 eliminated the personal property tax. And that, of course, does not have anything to do with school districts, but it does have to do with well, it does in terms of municipality funding, of which a school district is considered a governmental entity, or a municipality in terms of the distribution of aid. And so there would be some personal property tax based aid that schools would receive, okay? With Act 12, that being repealed, they had put into place Act 12 in 2023, which is to address the foregone personal property tax revenue and give municipalities and other government entities a more predictable source of funding. So I don't know that that means every year will now be $96,899. We still have to do some more, the additional 58, I should say. We still have to do some more research on what that looks like. I'm inclined to think that, again, this will be something that does modulate over time. 24-25 would have been the first budget year that this Act 12 actually had purview over, even though it was passed in 2023. So there you go. When it's all said and done, we underestimated, or we were pretty much right on with our expenditures, 99.81%, which is pretty darn close to 0.09% away, and 0.019, pardon me, and underestimated revenues by 2% or 2.5%, which is what accounts for that surplus gap. So technically good news. When we see this all wrapped down and the numbers are certified or are finalized by our auditors, we'll request likely that the board transition those dollars to Fund 46 for our facilities fund, so that we have, you know, rainy day facilities money that we can set aside and not have an impact in state funding scenario for this budget year and forward. But that'll be a different day. Any questions?
Nice job, Lorraine.
Well, I didn't do it all, but thanks.
You do a big part of it.
Yes, she does.
Any questions?
I have a question on the expenses. So even though we were pretty close on the expenses, some of the categories are significantly above the threshold? Is there anything notable? You kind of walked through the revenue side of it. Is there anything notable on the expense side that we should be aware of?
Yes, I appreciate you drawing me back to that because I just skirted over that and I have notes here. I prepared and I just didn't even talk about it. I don't know why.
Right on.
So, thank you. So for vocational curriculum and for physical curriculum, that's just, when you set a curriculum budget, it's going to be kind of a cast forward based off of what you might have done prior years. And I would be lying if I told you where our 548 and 424 came from, so I'm talking about the, or pardon me, our 423 and 382 came from. When I say that could be an average over the last 3 years or 5 years, it could be the same number we used last year, just cast forward. I'm not certain how Lorraine actually dials in those numbers. I'm not calling her out, I'm just saying you can budget this in any number of ways. You could also see those be just flat whole numbers, you know, 400,000 and 300,000 or 500,000 and 400,000. The point is that those dollars are set aside in those accounts for curricular purchases, and sometimes those curricular purchases exceed those numbers, and sometimes those curricular purchases do not. In this case, we didn't make curricular purchases in terms of vocational and physical curriculum, so what ends up happening is that, we did, so those incrementally had to be increased for the 24-25 budget and make those modifications. We didn't spend the dollars, and then they went down from 548 to 423. See what I'm saying? And 424 to 382. So basically, those are dollars that were unspent in curriculum that we could have had access to or that were budgeted for, but items were not purchased. Is that making sense? When we talk about pupil services, that's the one down. You see 72% right under the instruction double line there. That's another one that is at 72.9%. And why is that low? I will emphasize that's not Fund 27, that's not special ed, that's pupil services line that has to do with counseling and some mental health things, and primarily staffing is encumbered in that. And that's the majority of what the change is, because we have 2 new counselors in the district, and among other things that make that swing. So you have individuals that leave a role at a higher salary than people coming in, and that accounts for much of that difference there. Board admin, you see, is 40.71%. Some of that's encumbered via legal fees and miscellaneous other items. Sometimes those dollars have to get spent, and sometimes they don't. And so you'll see that that's a fund area where we're going to place some dollars in the event of an issue, where we can dig into that board or admin, or legal fees. We get into a pickle legally speaking, and before you know it, the budgeted 341 is 500,000. So that can go in any number of directions, but it's always good when you can see that that's well underspent, which admittedly is part of the plan. So we wouldn't budget that number there hoping to spend it all, but you're going to, of course, allocate dollars as you understand your revenues. And then building admin, principals, it was 798 in the budget, and it dropped to 686, which is 85.91% of the total. And that too has to do with some changes, that we had in staffing and transitions. So, yeah. So generally what ends up happening is we know that if we do our budget for, again, expenditures on the high side, our hope is that we overestimate on expenditures to a degree, not wild, but underestimating revenues, so that we have a budget that's arguably going to be either zero or very slightly negative or slightly positive as we conclude a fiscal year. That's the plan. Part of the reason that school accounting gets a little bit of a bag or a black eye is, well, you should have known that. And in some of these cases, you don't know. You don't know the ins and outs of personnel from the start of the school year to the end of the school year. Sometimes you add personnel, sometimes you lose personnel. You get positions open that you don't fill or that you can't fill. Insurance, that's an easy one. We know what our insurance costs are going to be, but we don't know what the increase is going to be. So you're going to budget based off of, say, a 4% or 6% or 7%. Well, what if we get a 12%? We shop the market, we got to eat 12%. Well, we didn't budget for that, so you're going to see swings there. Very little of what we actually deal with as a district are fixed costs that remain constant for the entirety of a fiscal year. And so that's where you do your best in terms of budgeting to ensure that you're in the ballpark or in the realm. But also underestimate or overestimate expenditures to a minor degree and underestimate revenues to a minor degree, so that we do find typically that we have good news at the conclusion of the year. And if we don't, we can describe why that would be. And initially, I had emailed you about the $150,000 higher Fund 27 transfer from Fund 10. That is legit, that didn't go away. The difference is that the additional revenues and some of the under expenditures can cover that difference. And after all the numbers rolled in, we found that we were positive, so.
Looking at that part of it, for next year, do we anticipate it being that again, based on the same kids coming back? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so part of the difficulty there too is, and when we start finalizing numbers and putting that into, that's a conversation Lorraine and I will have. Shooting from the hip, I would say yes, we're gonna anticipate spending at least as much, and with maintenance of effort, you're kind of, there can be some swing. Maintenance of effort's federal law that has applicability to the states with respect to your special ed fund spending. You can't go below a certain threshold without valid reasons, otherwise you're in violation of maintenance of effort, which is part of IDEA and federal statute. So the point is that yes, we would likely budget for that higher special ed number. That could come in lower, it could still come in higher. Keep in mind that if we have a student with special needs that comes into the district resident typically, because our open enrolled students special education program is full, so those open enroll applications are closed, and we deny open enroll applications for special education because our programming is full. But if we have a district resident move in with a unique set of needs and they're a very high cost individual, we have to incur those costs under statute. We don't really have a choice in the matter, which means we have to hire staff if that's what's needed, or we have to buy specialized equipment, or if we have to make building modifications, whatever the case may be. So that would be encumbered into Fund 27. You can't really plan for that because you don't know who comes and who goes. So in essence, yes, we'll budget the higher number and then hope that we actually have to transfer less. Pretty much is what we're going to be.
Any other questions?
Probably more than you bargained for.
Always thorough explanation.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We'll move on to the lease of the top floor of the 520 Blanding Woods Road wrestling space.
Okay, so this of course is not for action, it's just to begin the conversation, but as the board and many community members, including anybody that was involved with wrestling, is aware, we are struggling with wrestling space because we have over 60 athletes between boys and girls wrestling. And although our wrestling room is much larger than it used to be prior to the construction of the new weight room, it's still fairly undersized for even, just the guys team. And so we have struggled with finding space in the facility. In fact, a few weeks they were wrestling on the stage in the Fine Arts Center, which of course ruffles some feathers, justifiably because again it's an auditorium, but on the same hand, we're trying to figure out what to do so that we're not having kids practice at 8 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, and that we have ability to continue to run our programs. They of course use the stage at the elementary. They use the gym space when that's available. If both the ball teams are on the road, so our wrestling team ends up being the group, and they use the space upstairs, but ends up being the group that gets moved around to various locations based off of space availability just because of circumstance. There really isn't a lot of other options. So throughout the course of last year, we had some conversations internally about what do we do to rectify this. And one of the things would be, well, let's construct a wrestling facility. Well, you're talking, conservatively $2, $3, or $4 million. Well, that's not going to happen. Of course, in the short term, what the future holds, God only knows. But we need to figure out some solutions to the problem. Maureen Junker had reached out, I think it was this summer or late last school year. Late last school year is when it was, and said, hey, here you might be looking for some wrestling space. And we had, I'm going to say, loosely evaluated some potential other options with, Joe would raise some questions and so forth. But they have the building that Trap Rock Brewing is in, that's right over here on Blanding Woods, so of course it's walkable distance. It's probably the same distance as walking from here to the track. So viable in that regard in terms of sending kids over there. They have 4,000 square feet of largely empty space on the second floor of that building, which they are willing to lease. And I'm not telling you that this is a guarantee, there's still some things that we have to talk about with Joe, whether or not we move in this direction and so forth. But it seems to be a viable possibility to provide some additional space for our wrestling program, continuing to utilize our existing space that we have here, as well as the elementary stage and all of these other things that we've been doing over the last several years. The terms of the lease are there for you included. What they had shot me as a potential monthly figure would be $1,900 a month. I think they would be very flexible in terms of realizing that we might, if we do end up entering into a lease, we might do it for a year, we might do it for 2 years, we might not do it. I mean, I think they recognize all of those things. I would also say that there's probably a bit of flexibility with respect to what that monthly cost would be, but still, of course, not going to be free. So somewhere in that $1,900, $1,800, $1,700 a month ballpark. But that was the potential solution for consideration. Another expense would be we have mats that we could put up in there, but we would have to line the walls likely with some kind of padded mats just for safety. And to give you a visual, it's basically stairs up on either end, and there is restroom facilities up there and running water, of course, and basically just a massive 4,000 square foot open space. There's pretty much nothing in there.
Is there any, because breweries have to be in an industrial area for whatever reason, but is there any concern about having something else in that building?
We had talked about that too, and what would end up happening is that we would have access to one entrance that would not have access to Trap Rock Road, right? So there is the front door of the place for Trap Rock doesn't, you would have to go into Trap Rock and then get access to go upstairs. So that can be cordoned off, and our athletes would enter through a back entrance, and there's ample parking over there. Through a back entrance and then get access to the stairs to get upstairs. So they would be sequestered from Trap Rock, yes.
But I mean, like, they can't open up this brewery downtown because it's not, I should know this, my wife does this, but.
Oh, because it's not zoned.
Zoned,
Yeah.
yes. It can't be zoned.
Because they have the big beer making equipment and all that, yeah.
So is there any concern about having something upstairs, especially?
I don't think so. I mean, operating a brewery is not inherently dangerous, as it were. I'm sure the, access to the brewery has to be limited, which of course we would do. We have not made any contacts to our insurance company with respect to what that looks like, but we would absolutely have to do that too. Yeah.
The lease that was in our board packet, it says it's the lower level, and you're saying it's the upper level. Is this just an example?
This is an example, and that's a draft of what Trap Rock has for their lease. And then the response was, what we would have would be very similar to that. Yeah.
Is there a bathroom?
Yes.
Shop?
There are.
Yeah, I have some questions. We have all kinds of sports at the school, and are there other sports where we spend $23,000 a year in leasing fees?
No, we don't lease any facilities.
Okay.
But we also, in most other cases, have ample space for sports to be conducted.
I mean, we could lease a space for a basketball team instead, so the wrestling could have the gyms. Just a matter of finding additional space for one of our programs.
Yeah, well, of course, we need to be informed of, because other sports have been told there's no money because they're not popular enough. So I think we need more information. We need to know, like, how much we invest per student in, like, maybe from Terra, all the, per student, how much we pay. What do we get in spectator revenue? Because I suppose wrestling produces spectator revenue, football does, volleyball does, basketball, some don't. So maybe it is justifiable by the spectator ticket revenue. I'm trying to think of, again, what other programs are we willing to spend over the course of, say, 10 years, for example,
Well, so I guess,
200 and some $1,000.
yeah, and I would argue this would be a short-term solution. I don't think that the district would want to lease a facility for perpetuity. I think that's insane. Whether it would be, you know, the potential purchase of a space that's renovated, whether it be a renovation of one of our buildings to accommodate wrestling. The long and short of it is, we have over 60 kids in wrestling. The space we have available is not functional. It does not serve the needs of the program. In 20 years, we might have 10 kids in wrestling. I don't know the answer to that question, but we can only do what we can do with the available information. So one of the arguments that I don't mean to argue with you, but a point that I'll make, Matt, is I coached cross-country when I worked here. You know what you need for cross-country? Nothing. You need shoes.
Right.
And so I think based on that argument, and clearly we could charge revenue for getting people to come and watch cross-country, which admittedly would be smaller than wrestling. But the point is that I think as soon as we're in a bit of dangerous territory when we're looking to equate use of space and cost of doing business with the relative value of a program. And I'll cite this beautiful addition that we have here, because if you talked about the total cost of this auditorium, which is absolutely phenomenal amenity for the city, or for the community, and for the school district and our students and our programming and band and choir and drama, and you added that all up on a per student basis, that's gonna be a wildly higher figure than 24 grand to lease a facility for wrestling. See what I'm saying? Same thing with a gym or with, you know, whatever. So I get where you're coming from. What I would throw back is to say we're looking at how we solve a space issue for a program, not valuation of the program or what the program brings. And I also would say that is this because they're an awesome program? Only insofar as it's got them to 60+ kids involved. Because if we had, I don't know, if we had a state championship boys and girls basketball team, and each of them had, now we have 2 gyms in the same building, so maybe this is a moot point, but each of them had, you know, 30, 40 kids per squad, and we're like, guys, we can't, we gotta do something here. And the foreseeable future is the maintenance of that. We would probably be talking about, okay, we gotta figure out how to add gym space or do something different here. You know what I'm saying? So it's about wrestling insofar as that's the program that's impacted. Their success and involvement, I think, the increased numbers are a result of that, which is great. But I think when we equate the value of a program to the overall cost of facilities to operate that program, we'd have to look at a wide variety of things, and you're gonna see all the way from, you know, $10 per kid to something like I mentioned with the Fine Arts Center, 10,000 per kid over the term of how they're served. And I wouldn't say that we would lease a space forever. We need to figure out that problem. It's a problem, and I think we're gonna see it as a problem for the next many years. You know what I'm saying? I just do. And so I don't think a district wants to get into leasing facilities for 10 years. I don't think we want to do that. We would like kids on site. That's going to be the best thing. How we accommodate that, again, I don't know what the answer to that question is in the short term. Clearly, we're not asking a referendum question, but we are going to need to do something space-wise, and it would be best to do that in-house, but that's not something we can do in the short term.
Can you lean on the Yonkers to, you know, rent half the space, or suggest that they discount their rate by half or something as sort of a community effort? Or
I mean, they'll be open to conversations, but, you know, keep in mind, they're still business people, and they still have to meet certain, you know, expectations for themselves in the operation of the building.
Yeah.
I don't know to what degree. I know Maureen and Joel are great people, and they're very, very community-minded, but, you know, I don't know. I know we can talk about that to a degree. I was gonna say something else, but it's slipping my mind.
How many months of the year will be left unused?
Well, so if we think about it in terms of wrestling, we're really, November, December, January, February, and sometimes a little bit of March. And then, of course, there could be opportunities for youth wrestling and that sort of thing. So it wouldn't be used 12 months a year. There's no question in my mind. You know, we can figure out things to probably use it for for other purposes, but generally, no, it wouldn't be, booked up solid 12 months a year.
But we'd have to pay the 12 months.
Yes.
It might, I wonder though, open up for more use though. If you talk to.
If we have it.
If you have it, there might be opportunities for the coaching staff to kind of figure out how they could do more wrestling throughout the year, or do more of something to prepare for the season, I bet, if you have
Yes.
more space.
Well, you can coach year round now, except for 1 week.
That's
every year.
correct. And I know what I was gonna say earlier, half the space wouldn't be beneficial because frankly, between Joe and some of the other coaching staff, the 4,000 square feet isn't sufficient to do a 60-kid practice out there. So we're still gonna have to do some dancing around even with 4,000 additional square feet.
What is the square footage that they have right now available? Like how many kids, by adding this extra 4,000 square feet, does that accommodate?
I'll get those numbers for you. I have them back in my office and I don't remember the square footage of the wrestling room and the old weight room. The old weight room is that area that's back against the boiler room, and you can practice back there with maybe, 6 kids or 4, it's small. And then the space that's been the wrestling room forever, and I don't mean to put words in Joe's mouth, but he said it'd be tied up there practicing just with 14 guys, which is your standard wrestling team. That's what they've done for years, I'll throw that out there. There's always been decent wrestling participation, I don't think 60, that's probably because we've added girls. But I remember back in the old days when I was AD, there was still probably 25, 30 kids involved in wrestling, and it's super, super tight up there. So wrestling in space constraints has been a thing here for a long time.
And they've juggled time slots, like the JV team practices at this hour, and
Yeah.
the C team practices at this hour.
You got, it's 60 is just the high school.
Yeah, it doesn't include the middle school.
Yeah, that doesn't include middle school or youth
Middle school boys
wrestling.
and girls program, which the girls, there's like
Huge.
20 girls in the middle school that are wrestling. It's a big
Yeah.
number, so.
What do you got, Kurt?
For this summer program, there was over 100 kids registered, 115 for all the events, and they were coming in pretty much every, over 100 is pretty standard now.
Thanks.
And we're leveraging the other gym space at the elementary. I'm assuming they used to use that space.
The middle school wrestle on the stage, or they have been.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the stage, the gyms are full all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrestling has been basically anywhere that you have an open space, and part of the problem is that it takes a lot of space for wrestling. Even the stage, which is a very large area, I think they can put out one mat, was it, Mike?
I think it was one.
Or not even a full mat,
Three quarters maybe.
and that's a huge space. Yeah, so, right. Arguably, to fit the program, what they would need is like 3 mats of space, which is a lot.
Perhaps the Booster Club would consider a pole barn somewhere.
Potentially, and there's some conversation about the potential of the building itself being sold at some point in the future, but we're not even going down that path. It's not something that's listed. We're not in the market for purchasing, but we have to do something for wrestling. I can't stress that enough. It's not viable, and it's tough. And think about it from a coaching perspective too. And now I'll go on my rant with respect to the program. If I'm coaching cross-country or track, I stand outside and I can have 500 kids, it doesn't matter. But if I'm coaching basketball, wrestling, or something where I'm indoors, and now I've got 3 locations of wrestling happening, how am I doing this? You know what I'm saying? So there are logistical things that end up transpiring too that make it much more complicated to continue to do an outstanding job, which I will say this is not coming from the coaching staff and school staff hollering at me saying, we need to do something, or community members. This is from me dealing with this from last year, and I'm not saying, well, I don't want to deal with it, because we're going to have to figure it out as we move forward. But we got to problem solve. I mean, Mike and Tara and I spent, because it was crazy, we spent a lot of time figuring out what to do with wrestling last year, and more than once I said, this is nuts, we need to figure out something more long-term for wrestling, because it's tough. And this wouldn't even be the best solution. The best solution is that they have a space where they can all be, or the vast majority of them can be. and then we go from there. There's no scenario that I can see where that's a possibility in the short term, anyway. So.
Is there any, concerns, I mean, I mentioned the zoning and all that kind of stuff, but what about just general building regulations and stuff? Like, I'm obviously familiar with hospital stuff, and we don't have to be that strict, but is there any of that we'd have to take into consideration before you start throwing kids in buildings?
I don't think so. That building is, Joel explained it to me. So if you go inside, it's a rafter system on the inside, and it's wrapped with steel or tin or whatever they wrap it with. And they're huge girders that are on a foundation, a buried foundation. There's not a basement in there. But then the second level is actually like that spancrete that was set on top of that, so it was bolstered more to add that second level, because initially it was a wide open, you remember, something like a knitting mill maybe or something? It was a wide open building. No, somebody stored their sailboat in it or something. It was something weird. I don't know, they gave us the whole story. But it used to not be a two-story, and that second story was added. So I have no question that it's up to code and very safe and stable. This is not,
I'm thinking HVAC.
it's got its own HVAC, heating and cooling, second floor is all separated. So, yeah, I mean, it's, aside from like the walls, it's updated and nice, aside from the outside walls.
Is anybody brought up the fairgrounds buildings?
I was wondering the same thing.
That's close too, or maybe they do it for half or less. They have huge buildings that are huge.
The restroom facilities are a question that I know we've looked at fairground facilities for other things in the past, and
They need water, they need access to
restroom and water is not
Otherwise, they're
available,
hauling around.
other
It's
than
just
like
the
the
one.
4-H building in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yep.
I think that's the only one that has water.
And restroom facilities.
Well, sure, but I think it does have restroom facilities, the huge building, and it has heat and a kitchen, which means it has water. Do they use it except for the fair and leasing to graduation parties and stuff?
Yeah, I
Because,
don't know.
say there's 6 months available for $600, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any other like building considerations. I mean, I recognize it's a challenge that we need to figure out, and so if there's any other like opportunities.
There was another
Much like-
pole shed-esque building that's up in the Walmart industrial area. I think they're up there. So one of the neat reasons that this is attractive is proximity too. Because, I mean, we can have kids drive, but you get into carpooling. We do not have the transportation available to have a bus sit here and haul kids back and forth to an off-site location. So that would be the limiting factor in my mind. And if we get in, if the board's like, look, we got this space, it's way cheaper and it's up here behind Walmart and kids can drive, then kids can drive. I mean, then we can make that work. But that would be one of the limiting factors. Water availability, restroom availability were the other limiting factors, because I'm pretty sure, didn't Joe say that the one that was up there doesn't have, but could have it added or something like that? So I think so. So, yeah, I mean,
Well,
we
back to
did
the
it,
fairgrounds, yeah, back to the fairgrounds, though.
and I've never talked to anybody about the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
No, and I can do that. We can figure that out.
It's massive, isn't it? It's way bigger than 4,000 square feet.
Is it a concrete floor?
It is, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, is it
It's-
insulated?
That's what I'm wondering.
I can't picture insulation. Are those walls finished on the inside?
I don't know. I'll make a few phone calls.
Because they might shut off the water.
Yeah,
or
it's
something. They might drain it.
But
But
maybe
it's
they,
it's a good question.
but
That
anyway,
is a
maybe
large
if they're
building.
bringing in money,
Yeah.
then they just keep it heated, I don't know.
Yeah. That's worth a looking into.
I'll
Yeah.
ask.
The other thing that may be of consideration, if there's any further conversations, is if they would consider just leasing for a shorter period of time for like the initial kind of season of use, to at least like kind of fill a void till we can figure something else out, so that there is maybe something in place, so they consider, whatever the season timeframe is, if it's 6 months, just a short term,
Mhm.
potentially.
Or brainstorm other users if they're not gonna budge
Other one.
on a year.
The problem with wrestling though is that you put the mats down, you don't pick them up and put them down and pick them up and put them down. So sharing the space during the wrestling season would be a non-starter.
I meant off-season.
Oh, sure, yeah. And that would be, since we don't own the building, that'd be on them to figure out, you know, and that would be something they would probably identify if we said I'll go for 6 months.
Well, yeah, he's saying if we had to do the full year, right, we could look at other opportunities to use the building.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
we would do that, but
Yeah.
I'm also not going to spend our time trying to find a lesser for months we're not using it, because that's, you know, I mean, it's a limited use space, it's a giant open space, I don't know what else we do with it, really.
I do wonder if some of the spring sports have an opportunity to use some space, because, I mean, it's not uncommon that you'll find a youth baseball team practicing on a hill, because there's no like parking lot space if there's weather issues with like track or snow or something. I mean, there are other like spring sports that would use it when wrestling is over and those early,
Yeah, March, April gets pretty hairy with gym space
yeah.
for bad weather spring
Kind of like
sports.
baseball, right? I mean,
Well,
they're stuck in a
Baseball, softball,
gymnasium.
track, everybody, like, it's
Yeah.
crummy
You
weather.
know, everybody's.
It's March and April and sometimes May even, and so, no one expects.
Yeah,
it to be so
I think we'd be able to figure things out,
Yeah.
but absolutely saying, you know, would you consider a 6-month lease? There's no reason we can't ask that question.
Right. Any more discussion on that? We're not approving that tonight, so.
No, I'll get answers to these questions, and we'll bring it back again, some more details. Tara and I are meeting with Joe, prior to our next meeting, I don't remember the date, but here in later August, and so we'll have some more details in that regard too, and hopefully all the questions are answered by then. And if it's on the agenda, we'll look for approval. If it's not, I'll give you a reason why.
All right, anything else? Anybody need a break before we go into the board meeting? If not, I'll call the board meeting to order. I'll start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll do the roll call.
Matt Bryce,
Here.
Tashina Rager,
Here.
Don Milky,
Here.
Ronnie Schuler,
Here.
Brett McCurdy.
Here. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And the thing on there is the expulsion, minutes from the expulsion hearing on 7/9. I'll take a motion to approve those.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Matt,
I'll second.
second by Tashina. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried. Upcoming events. Monday, we have all teacher in service, starting at 8, right?
8:15 is when the big shindig, well, 7:30 is when we start breakfast and pictures, 7:15, pardon, breakfast and pictures, that kind of thing. And then 8:15 is the big shindig. I would encourage board members to come, because I'm going to do an icebreaker, and you don't want to miss it. You do not want to miss my icebreaker. It's going to be fantastic. And there are certain employees that if they put in sick time or any kind of leave time for that day, I'm going to deny it.
I do plan on being here.
I'm having fun, but there is going to be an icebreaker. It's one that everybody can enjoy, though.
Is
I'll be
that-
out of town.
Where am I at in the agenda?
After the icebreaker. You and I are going to do the icebreaker together. I'll call you up on stage.
Somebody film this, please.
It's going to be all right. Now, trust me, if you don't know me well enough by now, I'll just break it to you. I'm not an icebreaker guy. So there's more to this story. I'm just, I gotta leave the teaser out there, but there is going to be an icebreaker.
All the more reason for the recording.
Yeah.
All right.
Rita, you're on it. You have to video it.
Okay.
Among other great things, by the way. There will be serious portions as well.
Then we have our second meeting on the 26th. What does it say, 26th and 28th?
That's.
Oh, that's school.
That's our jump start.
Yep. 27th is the next board meeting, and then, of course, September, first day of school, and then our regularly scheduled board meeting on the 10th. And then, of course, we will have 2 meetings in September, on the 24th and the 2nd.
Can I, before before we adjourn to executive closed session, can I read these announcements?
Absolutely.
We have one from the Nelson family. It says, "Your kind and thoughtful expression of sympathy is deeply appreciated and gratefully acknowledged." Signed, the Nelson family. And we have one from Brian Ecker. It says, "School board and Mr. Broren, I want to say thank you for the gift card to Menards for my retirement. This was above and beyond on your part. When I first moved here, I didn't know how long I would stay. I ended up never looking to leave. This was because of the people I worked with and the district I worked for. The school board especially was always so supportive of kids and teachers. Thank you, Brian Eckert, former 7th grade teacher."
How many years was he here?
15.
I remember Henry.
And then I have a letter from Kinship of Polk County that says, "Dear District Administrator and Board members, thank you for your continued partnership with Kinship of Polk County. We received your check for $2,000. Your financial support will allow us to remain a strong asset in your school district. Carolee Tolixson is the kinship coordinator for St. Clair Falls. She will continue to work closely with the guidance staff and teachers to provide positive mentoring experiences for both middle school and high school students in your district. Please don't hesitate to contact Carolee or me with any questions you may have. Thank you again for your support of mentoring and the benefit it brings to students of all ages. We love working in your school. Thank you." And it's signed by Lisa Bailey.
And I would say kinship is awesome. It's awesome for the middle school kids and it's awesome for high school kids.
And are the middle and high school kids the ones doing the mentoring or being mentored?
The high school kids mentor the middle school kid. Yeah.
They
And they
don't
do-
go down to that retreat.
They do not, I don't believe, no. And they do, I mean, you'll see Uno to basketball to weight room to, I don't know, coloring, knitting, whatever. It's super interesting what kids decide to do with one another. And lo and behold, I'm not aware of any issues. Mr. Wilson, you?
You know, no, nothing big. No, no. Really not. Maybe little things, because kids are kids.
Yeah.
Kid might be a goofball one day, but no, not real issues, no.
There you go. Good stuff.
No. All right, thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn to executive closed session pursuant to section 19.851C and F of Wisconsin statutes.
I'll make that motion to adjourn to executive closed session.
A motion by Tashina,
I'll second.
second by Dawn. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Matt Bryce,
Yes.
Tashina Rager,
Yes.
Don Milky,
Yes.
Ronnie Schuler,
Yes.
Brent McCurdy.
Yes.